This is the Twilight Whispers Club. The sky dims, the wind stills, and somewhere between day and night, a story leans in to speak. These whispers aren't loud, but they stay with you. You've been invited. Lean in close and listen. This inheritance of dust and echoes was never sought. The farm, a geography of my father's thunderous temper and my mother's brittle quietude, held nothing I wished to reclaim. Yet his passing lassoed me back, tethering me to this patch of earth by the fraying rope of an outstanding mortgage and 3 decades worth of neglected accumulations. Obligation, not sentiment, dictated my return. The disquiet began subtly on the 3rd evening. I sat nursing a beer on the sagging back porch, the air thick with the thrum of crickets, letting the twilight soften the hard edges of the place. Then, a flicker at the threshold of the woods, perhaps 50 yards distant where the property surrendered to the trees. Something pallid, luminous against the deepening verdure. A deer, I assumed, common trespassers here. But my focus sharpened, straining against the dimness, and a cold fist clenched in my chest. The silhouette was aberrant, too erect, too slender, humanoid, yet fundamentally skewed. It stood with an unnatural rigidity, canted slightly forward, its whiteness stark against the encroaching gloom. My hand scrambled for the heavy flashlight, a necessity against the house's temperamental wiring. By the time its beam stabbed the darkness, the space was empty. Only trees, cloaked in shadow. A trick of the failing light, I reasoned. Fatigue playing puppet master with my sight. Still, the locks clicked firmly behind me that night. The windows double-checked before sleep claimed me. The following dusk found me vigilant. Same porch chair, flashlight resting heavy on my thigh, my gaze methodically sweeping the tree line. The sun bled below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised colors, and it materialized again. The same bleached form, motionless between the sentinel trunks of 2 great oaks. This time, the flashlight was ready. I thumbed it on, aiming the cone of light directly at the anomaly. Gone, utterly, just vacant air where it had stood instants before. A tremor ran through my hand as I played the beam along the dense foliage. The woods seemed to possess a thirst, swallowing the light barely 30 feet in. The figure, if ever truly there, had dissolved. Denial became my daytime companion. Stress, I told myself, grief, exhaustion, an overripe imagination fed by the unfamiliar quiet and the ghosts of this house. But a low, persistent hum of anxiety had taken root deep in my belly. That evening, I retreated indoors, stationing myself at the kitchen window. The house kept dark to better pierce the gathering night outside. It appeared with the punctuality of a phantom moonrise. The pale shape anchored at the wood's edge, but closer now. 40 yards, perhaps. Details swam into focus in the residual light. Its proportions were a study in wrongness. Arms that dangled too low, a neck bent at an angle that suggested breakage. It swayed, a languid, unsettling motion, like a reed in a current, though the night air was utterly still. My fingers, slick with sweat, fumbled with the flashlight switch. Its beam sliced the twilight, and again, the instant illumination struck its location, the figure vanished. I held the light steady on the spot, my breathing ragged, heart hammering against my ribs. Silence stretched, minutes crawled. Then, movement registered peripherally. It stood again, 10 feet to the left of my focus. I swung the beam. It evaporated as before, but this time I caught the exit. Not a run, not a walk, but a bizarre lateral scuttle, rapid and low, like some enormous pale crustacean. The sight injected pure, undiluted animal terror into my veins. I slammed down the blinds, retreating to the couch where I huddled under the glare of every functioning light bulb until dawn. Morning brought a call to the local constabulary. The deputy arrived, his manner professional, yet tinged with weary skepticism. He paced the property line, finding no tracks, no disturbed undergrowth. He tested the doors, the windows, offered advice about motion-activated lights, and departed with a platitude. Likely teenagers pulling a prank, he suggested. Or maybe a coyote caught in the shadows. They can look peculiar. But I knew. Teenagers don't ripple sideways. They don't sublimate under a flashlight beam. And coyotes do not stand sentinel on two legs. That afternoon was spent in a frenzy of dubious fortification. Motion sensors were mounted, their plastic eyes staring blankly towards the woods. 2 brighter, heavier flashlights joined my arsenal, their bellies filled with fresh batteries. Practical measures, I insisted inwardly. Reasonable precautions. Yet my hands shook, threading screws, and my gaze kept snapping back to the silent trees. Nightfall. I was armed, entrenched, lights poised front and back, bathing the yard in potential zones of exposure. 3 flashlights distributed like talismans throughout the house. I watched from the living room, lights extinguished, peering through a slit in the curtains. It manifested as the last vestiges of daylight drained from the sky, punctual as a nightmare. 30 yards out now, closer. The hostile glare of the newly installed security lamps should have revealed it clearly, but they remained stubbornly dark. Flicking the switch yielded nothing. A dead circuit? I snatched the nearest flashlight, pointing it towards the window. A feeble click. No beam. The batteries, the fresh ones, installed mere hours ago, were lifeless. The figure executed a step towards the house. Its gait was a discordant symphony of jerks and pauses, like a marionette with tangled strings. I scrambled for the second flashlight. This one flared to life. I aimed it through the glass. As ever, the figure disintegrated upon contact with the light. I kept the beam moving, a frantic searchlight cutting arcs across the lawn. A faint scratch sounded at the window pane directly behind me. I spun, my heart seizing. Nothing. But turning back, a fleeting image burned into my retina, that pallid visage pressed against the glass, inches from where my own face had been, eyes like vast black pools, a mouth devoid of lips, a slash stretching ear to ear in a silent howl or a horrifying grin. A fractional glimpse before it was gone. I fled upstairs, stumbling into the suffocating familiarity of my childhood bedroom, slamming the door, twisting the lock. I wedged myself into a corner, flashlight beam pinned to the door, listening. Sounds percolated up from the house below, a dry scrabbling within the walls, impossibly soft footfalls on the staircase, a delicate, persistent scraping against my bedroom door. Eventually, the sun asserted itself. Thin blades of light slid beneath the door, and the noises ceased. An hour passed in paralyzed silence before courage, thin and brittle, allowed me to emerge. The house stood empty, undisturbed. No marks marred the windows or doors. The yard outside was pristine. That morning, I packed. I called a realtor, instructing her to sell the property as is, contents and burdens included. Let the bank and the inheritor of junk wrestle with its future. Another night here was unthinkable. As I tossed my bags into the car, an impulse made me cast one final look towards the woods. There, stark against the green, bathed in indifferent daylight, it stood between two familiar trees. The figure. It raised one impossibly elongated arm. A wave, a beckoning. Its face stretched into that soul-freezing rictus. I didn't wait to decipher it. I drove. 2 weeks have passed. I inhabit a small, anonymous apartment in the city's heart, attempting to bury the farm and its sentinel under layers of urban noise and concrete. But sleep offers little refuge. Each night involves a ritualistic check of shadows, of corners, and sometimes gaze in from my third-floor window as dusk bleeds into the city lights. I perceive a flicker of movement between the opposing buildings. Something achingly pale. Something with arms too long and a head tilted at that broken angle. Something that feels closer. A flashlight resides on my nightstand now, a familiar weight, but a chilling certainty crystallizes within me. The light is no longer a deterrent. Perhaps it merely forces the thing into the periphery, making its approach harder to track. Last night, a faint scratching whispered at my bedroom window. When I looked, nothing. This morning, however, long, thin abrasions marred the exterior of the glass, 3 stories above the pavement, and when I checked the flashlight, its batteries were spent. Its nature, its motives, these remain opaque mysteries, but its persistence is terrifyingly clear. It followed me, and sooner or later, the beam of this flashlight, or any other, will prove insufficient. One of these encroaching nights, I will look up, and that distorted face will be pressed against my window, that lipless fissure stretched wide, and this time, there will be no further place to run. I commit this account to paper because the silence feels complicit. Should you read this, should you glimpse something pallid skittering at the edge of your sight, resist the urge to verify. Forget illumination, forget defenses. Flee. Flee without hesitation, though a dreadful suspicion grows within me, cold and heavy. Perhaps even flight is futile now, because once it fixes upon you, it doesn't tire. It draws nearer, night by inexorable night, and darkness eventually claims us all. I hear it again, that scratching at my window. The sun is setting. My flashlight is cold and dead. It's here. The chortle arrived precisely at 7:43 in the evening, interrupting my solitary communion with reheated lasagna. A profound, guttural resonance that had no earthly business existing within these walls. My fork slipped, striking the ceramic plate with a sharp report. The sound had emanated from the cellar. My cellar, inviolate behind its lock for 6 long years. 40 acres of whispering pine forest cocoon my solitude. The nearest sign of human life lies 4 miles distant. Motionless, I remained seated at the worn kitchen table. Above, the fluorescent light fixture emitted a low, persistent drone. Again, the laughter echoed, swelling in volume. A man's mirth, coarse and feral. A tremor began in my hand. Beads of perspiration gathered on my brow. The lasagna transformed into cinder on my tongue. 12 years I've inhabited this structure. The cellar door secured by a heavy padlock since my wife, Eliza, departed this world. Her sanctuary, her art studio, resided below. Following the somber rites, I sealed it all away. Her stretched canvases, the sable brushes, paintings arrested mid-creation. The sight was unbearable. The key rests still within my bedside drawer, cold and untouched. Laughter ricocheted off the aged plaster once more. My ribcage constricted. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against bone. Shoving back from the table, I rose. The chair legs grated across the hardwood. The noise amplified unnaturally in the expectant hush. "Is anyone present?" I called out, the words fracturing in my throat. Only silence responded, stitched through with the familiar groans of the old house settling, the wind's restless fingers rattling the window panes. Ordinary sounds, intimately known. But that laugh, that was aberration. That was impossibility. Toward the cellar door I drifted, legs feeling like uncertain reeds. The hefty padlock hung there, filmed with rust, yet undeniably secure. No indication of force, no telltale scoring around the keyhole. The door stood firm, exactly as it had for 2,190 days. Another burst of laughter erupted. This time, fragments of speech were woven within, distorted ancient syllables I couldn't decipher, yet undeniably language. The vibration traveled through the floorboards, unsettling my very souls. A sour knot formed in my gut. The key. I required the key. Verification was paramount. Knowledge essential. I ascended the stairs to my chamber, taking them in urgent pairs. It lay precisely where memory placed it, nestled in the uppermost drawer of the nightstand, swaddled in a time-softened handkerchief. My fingers quivered as I unfolded the fabric. More laughter drifted upward, nearer now, possessing a disturbing clarity. It sounded like a convocation. Multiple voices engaged in mirthful discourse, a phantom revelry unfolding beneath my feet. Clutching the brass key, I descended once more. The murmur of conversation intensified with each step. I could almost isolate individual words, yet comprehension remained elusive, merely the cadence of animated exchange. Before the cellar door, I faltered. The padlock felt frigid against my skin. The key jittered in my grasp as I attempted to align it with the lock. Twice it tumbled to the floor before finally seating itself. The mechanism yielded with a decisive click, a sound that felt both final and deeply wrong. Prudence screamed for the authorities, but the narrative, impossible laughter from a sealed cellar, would surely brand me delusional. I withdrew the padlock. Its weight felt substantial, real, anchoring the moment in terrifying tangibility. Below, the muffled colloquy persisted. With my pulse throbbing in my throat, I grasped the doorknob. It resisted, stiffened by years of immobility, then surrendered. The door groaned open on protesting hinges. A wave of stagnant air washed over me, the scent of dust, decay, of confined spaces and protracted abandonment. Flicking the switch, I was momentarily relieved to find the naked bulb at the stairhead still functional. casting a sickly yellow luminescence onto the wooden steps plunging into shadow. The voices achieved greater definition now, a chorus of distinct individuals speaking and laughing. The sound caromed off bare concrete walls. Still, the words themselves remained maddeningly indistinct. My feet commenced their own volition. One step down, then another. Ancient timbers groaned beneath my tread. Sweat trickled down my spine. My breathing grew shallow, rapid. Halfway down the flight, I paused. Abruptly, the voices ceased. The ensuing silence pressed heavily against my eardrums. My grip tightened on the railing until my knuckles shone white. "Hello?" I ventured again, my voice a frail echo in the void. "Who is down there?" The laughter detonated, cacophonous, wild, utterly unhinged, directly beneath me. The bulb overhead flickered erratically. Shadows leaped and contorted on the walls. I recoiled backward, stumbling up the stairs. My heel snagged a riser. I pitched forward, striking my elbow with bruising force. Agony lanced up my arm. The laughter pursued me, accompanied now by heavy footfalls pounding up the stairs in my wake. Scrambling upright, I fled, slamming the cellar door with a violence that vibrated through the door frame. My fingers fumbled with the padlock, dropping it. The doorknob rattled fiercely. Something slammed against the wood from the other side. The door shuddered violently within its frame. At last, my trembling digits guided the padlock shackle through the hasp, snapping it shut. I retreated, breath tearing raggedly from my lungs. The door continued its assault, the knob twisting frantically back and forth. Then, stillness. Absolute quiet returned, save for the frantic cadence of my own breathing, the frantic drumming of my heart. I stumbled to the kitchen, snatched my mobile, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911, state your emergency. "There's someone in my cellar," I gasped out. "Multiple people. I heard them. They tried to get out." "Your address, sir?" I supplied it, adding breathless explanations. The isolation, the locked cellar, the years, the impossible sounds. "Officers are en route," the dispatcher stated calmly. "Remain on the line. Are you in a secure location?" Kitchen. The cellar door is locked again. Even as the words left my lips, a new sound intruded. A dry, furtive scratching originating from within the walls, as if something skittered through the house's hidden arteries. "Police estimate arrival in 15 minutes, the operator relayed. "Are you observing or hearing anything currently?" The scratching intensified, multiplied, spreading through the structure. It seemed to emanate from everywhere now. The walls, the floor beneath my feet, the ceiling overhead, the frantic scrabbling of countless unseen things burrowing through the very bones of the house. "And scratching," I whispered, the sound barely audible, inside the walls. Oh, merciful God! The bulb above me pulsed once, twice, and extinguished. The phone in my hand went inert. Utter blackness descended. The scratching abruptly ceased. Into the profound silence crept the sound of respiration, not my own. Labored wet inhalations from multiple sources, seemingly surrounding me. The laughter recommenced, intimate, terrifyingly close, directly behind my shoulder. I bolted, colliding blindly with a wall in the darkness, groping desperately until my hands found the frame of the front door. I wrenched it open and plunged into the frigid embrace of the night. Distant strobes of red and blue pulsed, resolving into police cruisers navigating my long, unpaved drive. I tumbled down the porch steps, collapsing onto the sharp gravel. The laughter spilled out of the house behind me, pouring from windows and doors, seeping through every fissure like a noxious vapor. It was interwoven now, with screams, with guttural howls, inhuman ululations no human larynx could produce. The lead cruiser skidded to a halt. Officers emerged, weapons leveled. Their tactical flashlights sliced cones of white through the oppressive dark. "Stay back," I screamed hoarsely. "Don't enter. For God's sake, don't go in." The house detonated in a symphony of chaos. Every window pane exploded outward in a shower of glittering shards. The very walls seemed to distend, to bulge unnaturally. The front door ripped from its moorings, flung aside like kindling. From the yawning aperture poured darkness, not mere absence of light, but a tangible coiling blackness that writhed and laughed. It ascended towards the night sky, a pillar of animate shadow, coalescing. Visages materialized within its shifting form, grotesque countenances leering with supernumerary eyes and impossible dentition. The officers discharged their weapons. The rounds vanished into the darkness without effect. The faces laughed, louder, wilder. Then, as swiftly as it began, the phenomenon ceased. The darkness dissolved. The laughter dwindled into silence. The night settled, disturbed only by the low thrum of idling police engines. We discovered the cellar utterly vacant. No evidence of forced entry. No footprints disturbed the thick mantle of dust, save for my own. Eliza's studio appeared precisely as I had abandoned it 6 years prior. Her unfinished works rested on their easels, draped in cobwebs. Yet, a profound alteration had occurred. Every single canvas was starkly, impossibly blank. The nascent images she had been rendering at the time of her passing vanished, as if meticulously erased from existence. Only sterile white rectangles remained. The police offered no solutions. They documented my disjointed testimony, meticulously searched the grounds, compiled their report. A potential gas leak inducing hallucinations was tentatively proposed. A furnace inspection recommended. I offered no counter-argument. How could one articulate the reality? The truth resided in those vacant canvases, in the phantom resonance of that hideous laughter. I secured the cellar door once more with the padlock, then hurled the key deep into the surrounding pines. I packed a single valise and sought refuge in the anonymity of a motel. The following day, the house was listed for sale, yet the sound persists, surfacing in the dead of night within the landscape of my dreams, that feral, unbridled laughter, and beneath it, almost lost, a woman's voice, Eliza's voice, crying my name, again and again and again. I never returned. I never ascertained the true nature of the cellar's occupant. Certain questions are best left unasked. Certain doors, best left eternally sealed. But this, I know with chilling certainty. Whatever resided down there is not yet finished with me. The laughter stalks me still, drawing nearer with each passing night. One day, inevitably, it will overtake me. And in that moment, I will finally comprehend the fate of Eliza's paintings, the truth of what waited patiently, in the darkness beneath my home for all those years. I only pray I endure the revelation. The cemetery yielded its first secret barely a week after I began my nocturnal vigil. An ephemeral glow, pale and fleeting, near a rank of time-split stones. I recall the beam of my torch slicing towards it, only to find emptiness where it had pulsed. No word of this passed my lips. I harbored no desire to be branded skittish, a man unnerved by shadows. Vigilance, silent and watchful, became my resolve. Little did I fathom the depths unfolding. Solitude is my companion on this shift, commencing near 10 each night and dissolving only with the dawn's first tentative light. No mourners linger past dusk. An imposing lattice of wrought iron girdles the grounds, its gates secured against the living world. Within lies a realm of tussocks of unruly grass, meandering paths of loose scree, and the occasional squat mausoleum brooding in the dark. The memorials themselves are worn smooth by time's indifference, names blurring into illegibility. My tools, a heavy torch casting a stark cone of light, and a crackling transceiver tethering me to a security hub blocks away. A connection rarely tested. Intruders do not favor this place of forgetting. That particular night found me commencing my rounds at the cemetery's northern extreme, a stretch dense with antiquated graves, some dating back to the century's dawn. Here, the meager luminescence from distant street lamps surrendered entirely to shadow. My torch beam swept methodically, probing for any disturbance, though expectation remained low. Burials ceased long ago. The very earth felt parched, forgotten. An aroma of loam and decaying leaves hung heavy on the air, stirred by a faint breeze that sighed through the iron bars of the fence. My boots ground a dull rhythm onto the gravel, each step measured, deliberate, as I surveyed section after silent section. Perhaps an hour dissolved into the gloom before the wandering phosphorescence returned, not as a singular instance, but as a scattering. These were no bold beacons. They drifted with a languid, erratic grace, akin to weak lanterns glimpsed through thick fog. No source revealed itself. They hung suspended mere feet above the earth, weaving between the headstones. When my torch beam found them, they would falter, thin, and dissipate into the night. Yet, turn the beam away, and they'd coalesce anew. Logic offered no anchor. I fought the urge to stare, pressing onward with my patrol. Then came the subtle susurrus, sounds soft and inexplicable. They brushed against the edge of hearing like voices, yet articulated no language I recognized. Low, muffled, as if filtered through soil itself. I strained to decipher them, the impression growing that they emanated from the very ground beneath the graves. Crouching beside a listing marker, holding my breath captive, I could discern something akin to whispering. Too faint for comprehension, devoid of the tinny quality of radio waves or the character of echoes, they seemed to shrink from scrutiny, quieting as I drew near, only to swell again when I retreated. A formless debate, perhaps, forever unintelligible. The sound had no fixed point. It shifted, migrated, enveloping me. A constriction seized my chest. My breath grew shallow, ragged. My knuckles whitened around the torch's grip. A fierce internal command urged calm, rationality. I checked the radio, its familiar weight a small comfort. No grounds existed yet for an alert. No trespasser, no vandalism, merely aberrant lights and phantom sounds. I resumed walking, tracing a row of tombstones, the torchlight glancing off their cold, weathered faces. Inscriptions swam, blurred by time and neglect. My fingers felt stiff, clumsy. My pulse hammered a frantic cadence against my ribs. Reaching the southeastern quadrant, I registered forms that had not been there moments before. Standing roughly human height, they possessed no discernible features, no faces to read. They were like silhouettes cut from pale mist, faintly translucent against the deeper dark. Their movement, too, was unnatural. They seemed to levitate inches clear of the ground, arms pendant at their sides, utterly still. 2 I counted initially, then 3, then a 4th materialized amongst the stones. I centered my beam on one directly. The shape dimmed, becoming a mere shadow within the brighter glare, before vanishing utterly. Extinguished the light, and it reformed, as though darkness were its necessary medium. What action could I take? My heart hammered violently. A tremor took hold of my hands. Tentatively, I advanced on the nearest silhouette. Within a few paces, the air plunged in temperature, prickling my skin, raising the hairs on my arms. An instinct screamed retreat. I could perceive no eyes, no mouth upon its smooth expanse, no sign of recognition, yet an undeniable sense of awareness emanated from it. I stepped back. It remained impassive. The metallic rasp began after midnight, originating somewhere behind me. It conjured the sound of heavy chain links being dragged across earth or gravel. I spun, torch beam stabbing the darkness. Nothing. The sound receded as I advanced towards its apparent source. When I halted, listening intently, it returned, always just beyond the periphery of sight or illumination. I attempted flanking maneuvers, circling wide, but the source remained elusive, phantom. Nothing within the cemetery's inventory could produce such a noise. No groundskeepers worked these hours. No tools lay abandoned. The gates, I knew, were locked fast. My light swept the fence line. Stillness. Yet, an unnerving certainty grew. Something watched from the exterior, lurking just beyond the torch's reach. A faint rustling whispered nearby. Wind or something else? I retreated towards my post, the small watchman's hutch near the cemetery's heart. Inside, Sanctuary offered a simple wooden chair, a desk, a lamp, and a window framing rows of silent graves. The door clicked shut, the lock engaged. Seated beneath the lamp's yellow glow, I fought to govern my respiration. Tension radiated from my shoulders. Rubbing my face, I wrestled with the night's occurrences. No rational explanation surfaced for lights and forms such as these. The transceiver beckoned. Yet what coherent report could I offer? Any intruders? No. Any damage? No. The inevitable response. Stay alert, investigate further. Futile. Rising, I pushed the door open and stepped back into the chilled air. The spectral motes still drifted, pulsing softly between the headstones. The sibilant sighs persisted, and the pallid silhouettes stood their silent vigil among the graves, subtly rearranging their positions when my gaze slid away. Slowly, I walked a path northward, my footfalls heavy on the ground. the dry air stinging my eyes. I kept the torch beam low, scanning the crunching gravel. Silence, I told myself. Listen carefully. The wind quickened slightly, carrying a deeper chill that felt like an icy caress upon my nape. I hunched my shoulders against it and pressed on. The whispering intensified as I neared a gnarled ancient tree, presiding over a cluster of particularly old graves. Still no words emerged, just that low, indistinct murmuring, like a distant argument muffled by thick walls. Patterns eluded me. My light played over each marker, revealing surfaces weathered and cloaked in faint, tenacious moss. An attempt to wipe one clean with a gloved hand proved useless. The growth clung fast. Giving up, I continued, but a glance back revealed one of the featureless effigies near the fence, hovering beside a tall monument. I moved towards it. It glided backwards, maintaining its distance with eerie precision. Stop, and it stopped. Circle left, and it drifted right, keeping the stone between us. A knot formed in my stomach, a primal warning against closer contact. My breath hitched, sweat beaded on my palms. Should I risk the radio? Could others have witnessed such things? The thought died a borning. Alone. They would deem me unstable. I lowered the transceiver, resolving to wait, to observe. My patrol led me eventually to the western boundary. The chain sound resumed, closer now, scraping unmistakably against the ground. My torch beam shot towards the noise. A patch of gravel seemed disturbed, subtly shifting, as though an invisible weight passed over it. I edged nearer. Silence fell. I stepped back. The dragging recommenced, now originating behind me. I whirled. Nothing. The frantic pulse in my ears nearly drowned out thought. My jaw clenched until it ached. Beyond the fence lay the mundane world. A dimly lit street, parked cars like sleeping beasts, silent buildings etched against the night sky. Yet, the sense of scrutiny intensified, emanating from just beyond those bars. I approached the fence, probing the darkness between the iron posts with my light. Nothing visible, yet the feeling persisted. Something stood just outside the illumination, waiting for my gaze to falter. I held the beam steady, arm protesting, neck stiffening. Minutes crawled by. Nothing revealed itself. Turning back towards the heart of the necropolis, I faced the familiar strangeness. Pale lights adrift, whispers weaving through the air. I walked among them again, seeking any physical anomaly. Disturbed earth, a loose stone, some tangible clue. Nothing. The ground remained ancient, undisturbed, save for my own prints. The effigies maintained their aloof distance, fading if approached, reappearing if ignored. By now, my entire body hummed with a nervous energy. Tension knotted my shoulders and neck. My back throbbed. My mouth felt like parchment. Months seemed to have passed since I'd last spoken. Clearing my throat just to hear a human sound felt necessary. The noise, small as it was, startled me. "Stay calm," I muttered aloud, then immediately felt foolish. "Stay here." Towards the hutch again. A glance at my phone. Just past 2 in the morning. Hours stretched until sunrise. Remaining confined felt unbearable, yet calling for aid seemed equally impossible. A plan began to form. Methodical circuits of the perimeter. Ignore the phenomena. Perhaps they would cease. Focus on the tangible. Check the locks again. ensure no physical breach. So I walked the perimeter, torch tracing the cold iron fence. The main gate's lock held firm. The side gate likewise secure. No breaks, no signs of tampering. The street beyond remained deserted. A solitary car hummed past in the distance, its headlights momentarily painting the far reaches of the road. Curiously, the whispering within the cemetery seemed to react, softening as the engine noise peaked, then swelling again as it faded into silence. I returned to the central area, the domain of the oldest graves. The lights now moved with less haste, drifting closer, their pulses steadier. Tentatively, I extended a hand towards one. No contact, just an intensification of the ambient cold where the light hovered. A peculiar, faint tingling danced across my skin, like the ghost of an electric current. I snatched my hand back. Study in the glow revealed no core, no definite shape, just a nebulous patch of dim radiance hanging in the air. The whispering and the dragging chains persisted as an unsettling background score, their locations frustratingly random. Behind me one moment, ahead the next, below, above, from behind the stones. I peered through the ventilation slit of a small mausoleum. Its locked interior was thick with dust and shadow, offering no answers. The whispers seemed muffled here, less insistent. Stepping back out, I saw one of the shapes drift in nearer than before. It halted perhaps 10 feet away, hovering beside a weathered statue of a robed figure. I tried the torch again. The silhouette dimmed, but stubbornly refused to vanish completely this time. I took a step forward. It held its ground. Still no features, just that smooth, pallid blankness where a face should be. Sweat slicked my forehead. My breathing grew rapid, shallow, my heart threatening to batter its way out of my chest. I retreated a step. The shape mirrored my movement, following, maintaining the 10-foot interval. Raising the torch, I waved it side to side. The entity drifted behind the statue, using it as cover, mirroring my lateral movements. I moved left, it shifted right. I moved right, it countered left. A chilling sense of being observed, perhaps even studied, washed over me. My head throbbed. My legs felt leaden. Enough. I turned towards the distant sanctuary of the shed. As my back presented itself, the chain sound erupted directly behind me. I spun around. The shape was gone. The chains fell silent. The pale lights still drifted, though several now seemed drawn towards the fence line, congregating near the perimeter, as if attracted to that unseen external presence. I consciously relaxed my jaw, realizing my teeth ached from clenching. Wiping my brow with a sleeve, I set a determined pace back towards the cemetery's center. The whispering pursued me, swirling around my stationary form whenever I paused, flowing from one cluster of markers to another. Stomping a foot yielded nothing. Kicking a loose stone produced only the mundane clatter of rock on gravel. Everything else remained profoundly abnormal. My phone showed 3:30 a.m. Dawn remained hours away. Weariness warred with hypervigilance. My shoulders burned with tension. Again, the urge to call. Again, the realization of its futility. Strange lights, whispers, faceless shapes, dragging chains, the report of a man unraveling. I would wait. Surely sunrise would banish these anomalies. The next hour became a slow circular patrol. My torch beam never rested, sweeping every corner, every row of graves. The shapes kept their distance, glimpsed occasionally drifting at the edges of my vision. The lights waxed and waned. The whispers ebbed and flowed. The chain sound surfaced intermittently, a phantom menace. Ephemeral touches, cold as ice, brushed my back, my neck, but turning revealed only empty air. The chill bit deeper, making my eyes water, numbing my fingertips. Finally, the blackness overhead began to soften, bleeding towards gray at the eastern horizon. As the nascent light seeped into the cemetery, the pale glows started to fade, their pulses weakening. The whispering dwindled to near silence. The chain sound ceased entirely. The shapes grew indistinct, dissolving like mist as true daylight asserted itself. I walked to the fence, peering out. The street lay empty, quiescent. The feeling of being watched from beyond had dissipated. The unseen presence was gone. I couldn't prove it, but the air felt different, lighter. When the sun finally breached the horizon, casting long shadows from the ancient stones, the cemetery appeared utterly ordinary. Just graves, wind, dry earth. Unlocking the hutch, I sank into the chair, the night's tension slowly releasing its grip, leaving behind a residue of exhaustion and unease. My shift was ending. Soon, I would leave this place to the day staff, to the oblivious world. Whether I would speak of this remained uncertain. No intruders apprehended, no damage documented, no tangible confrontation, only a long, dark passage through inexplicable phenomena. Tonight, I would return. Duty demanded it. Avoidance was not an option. Yet, the hope for a quiet night felt fragile, almost naive. After witnessing the veil thin, I doubted these things were truly gone, merely retreated, waiting for the comforting cloak of darkness. The memory of dragging chains, the chill of unseen presences, relaxation felt like a distant country. A shriek of rubber tearing through the night's velvet hush heralded the fracture, the instant my known world splintered. What began as a simple traversal, a weary passage through a slumbering township, devolved into a breathless scramble for existence itself. Shadows writhed with imagined threats. Each choice became freighted with the stark gravity of breath or silence. Midnight had just bled across the clocks as I navigated Oakhaven, piloting my way homeward after a draining vigil at a clinic 2 counties distant. The avenues lay abandoned, bathed only in the intermittent sodium glare of street lamps and the twin beams probing from my vehicle. Fatigue coiled in my limbs, my thoughts already drifting toward the sanctuary of waiting linens. Then, perception snagged. Caught starkly in the cone of my high beams, 2 figures wrestled violently within the recess of an alley, flanking the town's solitary bank. One pinned the other, a brutal embrace culminating, even from my vantage, in the unmistakable glimmer of steel. Instinct, untempered by thought, slammed my foot onto the brake. The car protested, tires screaming, arresting motion. For a heartbeat, the tableau froze. Both men pivoted, faces turning toward my sudden intrusion. I registered the flicker of alarm. No, raw panic, in the eyes of the aggressor. Then, entropy. The knife wielder flung his quarry aside and vanished into the deeper gloom. His counterpart lurched upright, hands clawing at his throat, lungs laboring for air. Prudence screamed retreat. Logic dictated a call to authority, a swift removal from this unfolding peril. Yet, the healer within, the ingrained imperative, refused to abandon potential suffering. Easing out of the driver's seat, phone already in hand, to dial emergency services, I called out, my voice tight but clear. "Are you all right? I'm a nurse. Can I help?" My steps were cautious, measured. He looked up, and the world tilted sickeningly. No trace of fear lingered in his gaze, no flicker of gratitude, only a chilling, deliberate malevolence. Before the synapse could fire a command to flee, he surged forward. His grip, a vice of bruising strength, clamped around my wrist. "You shouldn't have stopped," he rasped, wrenching my arm painfully behind me. Cold metal kissed my neck, the blade I'd glimpsed. "Now you're coming with us." Us. The syllable dropped like ice into my bloodstream. This wasn't mere assault. It was theater, a carefully staged performance designed to ensnare precisely the kind of unwitting Samaritan I had proven myself to be, and I had swallowed the bait whole. The second man materialized from the alley's maw, a predator's grin stretching his lips, eyes glinting with a cold amusement that turned my marrow to frost. "Well now," he murmured, his tone low, laced with menace. "Looks like we snagged ourselves a little heroin." They propelled me toward my own vehicle, the knife's edge a constant agonizing pressure against my skin. "You drive," Silas, the first man, commanded, shoving me forcefully into the driver's seat. His voice was flat, devoid of inflection. "Anything clever, anything at all, and this opens your throat before you can draw breath." As the car eased away from the curb, my thoughts churned, frantic. Where? Why? Oak Haven's familiar streets dissolved into a meaningless blur as I obeyed their clipped instructions. We were leaving the town limits, veering toward the tangled network of secondary routes that snaked through the encompassing woodlands. "Here," Corbin, the man beside me, barked, gesturing toward a barely discernible dirt track swallowed by shadows. Asphalt yielded to gravel, then raw earth, the car bucking and lurching deeper into the forest's embrace. Overhanging limbs scraped violently across the roof, a dissonant percussion accompanying our descent. Finally, a small clearing opened before us. A skeletal cabin slumped there, windows like vacant eyes staring into the oppressive dark. They hustled me from the car, the knife now a hard knot against my lower back, urging me toward the dilapidated structure. Crossing the threshold, the air thickened with the miasma of damp rot and decay. The interior was brutally sparse, a scattering of unsteady chairs, a table littered with maps and documents, and, in one corner, an object that seized my heart. A substantial metal safe. Its heavy door swung wide, revealing opulent stacks of currency and glittering jewels. "Welcome," Corbin sneered, the grin returning. "You just wandered into the aftermath of the biggest score this county's ever witnessed." The enormity crashed down, a physical blow. Not impulsive thugs, but calculated, organized criminals, desperate men. And I, Ilara, was the unforeseen complication, the witness they could ill afford to release. Hours bled away. Tethered to a chair, I became a reluctant audience to their increasingly heated debate. Silas advocated for swift, silent disposal. Corbin argued for leverage, the potential value of a hostage should their escape unravel. Through the haze of terror, my mind raced, desperately seeking purchase, any sliver of opportunity. It arrived borne on the storm. A deafening crack of thunder vibrated through the flimsy cabin walls, startling us all. Seconds later, the heavens opened, rain drumming a furious tattoo on the tin roof, a torrential roar engulfing all other sound. In that disorienting cacophony, I saw it, the chance. Throwing my weight backward with all my might, I felt the ancient brittle wood of the chair splinter and give way. Before Silas or Corbin could fully register the shift, I was scrambling upright, hands still bound but liberated from my anchor. I lunged for the cabin's flimsy rear door, bursting through it into the storm-lashed chaos of the night. Rain was both shield and impediment. It curtained my sight, transforming the woods into a treacherous maze, yet it simultaneously muffled the sounds of my frantic passage and cleansed the earth of my tracks. Blindly, I fled, branches lashing my face like whips, unseen roots conspiring to send me sprawling. Behind, muffled shouts and the crash of pursuit echoed, confirming they were on my heels, predators on familiar hunting grounds. Panic clawed at my throat, a suffocating tide, but I fought it back. Lost, pursued, imperiled beyond comprehension, yet a core of defiance refused to yield. Time dissolved. How long I plunged through that dripping, lightless labyrinth, I couldn't say. Each rustle, each snap of a twig, sent jolts of adrenaline through me, anticipating the bite of steel, the impact of lead. Yet, impossibly, I endured. Just as exhaustion threatened to claim me, a glimmer pierced the dense foliage. Distant lights. Hope surged, a final desperate fuel. I broke free from the tree line, stumbling onto the hard shoulder of a paved road, waving my bound hands wildly at the approaching glare of headlights. A vehicle skidded to a halt. For one terrifying, suspended moment, I braced, certain my pursuers had somehow overtaken me. But the driver's door swung open, revealing a woman, her face etched with concern. "Dear God," Martha gasped, her eyes taking in my drenched, disheveled state, the rope still cinched tight around my wrists. What on earth happened? The narrative spilled out, a torrent of words tumbling over themselves as she produced a small knife from her pocket and deftly severed my bonds. Before I had fully recounted the ordeal, she was already speaking urgently into her phone, relaying our position, sketching the nightmare I had just escaped. The ensuing hours were a kaleidoscope of flashing emergency lights and urgent inquiries. Law enforcement saturated the woods. By dawn's first light, they had located the cabin, apprehending Silas amidst the stolen riches. Corbin remained elusive, a phantom in the trees, but the trove of evidence ensured his capture was merely a matter of time. Wrapped in the comforting scratch of a shock blanket in the back of an ambulance, I watched the sun climb, painting the sky above Oakhaven in hues of improbable peace. The town stirred, oblivious to the nocturnal drama played out in its quiet corners and shadowed woods. Lives resumed their familiar cadence. But for me, the familiar was irrevocably altered. The world now felt layered with unseen menace, shadowed corners holding potential threats. Yet, paradoxically, it also shimmered with a newfound preciousness. I had met death's stare and turned away. I had unearthed a resilience, a tenacity I never knew lay dormant within. In the days and weeks that followed, through depositions and courtroom testimonies, the word hero was often spoken. It felt alien, ill-fitting. I was a survivor, someone hurled into the crucible who had, against all odds, clawed her way out. The experience reshaped me in ways still unfolding. Caution is now my constant companion, awareness, my default setting. But alongside the vigilance blooms a profound appreciation for the mundane miracles. A tranquil evening undisturbed, a walk beneath open sky, free from the backward glance, the simple, profound solace of safety. Sometimes, in the deep quiet of night, the echo of pursuing footsteps through rain-soaked undergrowth resurfaces. But then comes the quiet affirmation, I am here. I endured. And in that knowledge resides a fierce, quiet pride, a deep gratitude for the unexpected strength discovered in the heart of terror. The scream of tires that ignited the ordeal still resonates, but its echo has transformed. No longer just a harbinger of fear, but the opening note of a harrowing symphony that taught me the true visceral meaning of survival. The pre-dawn air possessed a keen, clarifying bite, oxygen sharp enough to scour the lungs clean, lending buoyancy to every stride. For 3 years, this ritual had been mine, the familiar circuit around Alder Creek Preserve, a path threading through sentinel pines, skirting the obsidian stillness of a small pond. My solitary communion, a space carved from the quiet before the world stirred fully. A soft, indeterminate gray still held dominion over the sky as my car settled into its customary niche beside the trailhead. The usual litany of stretches unfolded, muscles awakening, earbuds nested. I began the warm-up stroll toward the path's embrace. All felt placid, utterly routine. That ordinariness, in retrospect, sharpens the memory's edge. Perhaps 10 minutes dissolved into the rhythm of my run before I registered him, a silhouette wedged between 2 colossal pines flanking the trail. His sheer immobility snagged my attention. Most park patrons fidget, consult devices, stretch, or simply redistribute their weight. He, however, stood petrified, a figure cast in bronze and bafflingly deposited there overnight. I pushed onward, concentrating on the metronome of breath, the percussive beat of trainers on packed earth, yet an echo of unease resonated. Was it the incongruity of his dark jacket against the mild spring air, hinting at warmth to come, or merely that profound, statue-like stillness? Rounding the bend near the water's edge, the unmistakable sensation prickled. Eyes on my back, an invisible pressure. A swift scan confirmed it. He occupied a new vantage point, yet radiated the same unnatural inertia. This time, though, his posture was undeniably oriented toward me. My pace instinctively increased, even as logic chided the absurdity. Alder Creek drew others, surely. Some were simply eccentric. But completing another lap brought him into view again, closer now, perilously near the path itself. My heart began a frantic tattoo against my ribs, unrelated to exertion. One earbud came out, a sudden desperate need for auditory awareness flooding me. Birdsong stitched the air, a distant car door slammed, sounds of normalcy, of safety, yet they seemed muffled, distant compared to the frantic amplification of my own breathing, my own footfalls. Decision made. I'd cut across the preserve's heart, abandoning the loop. As I veered onto the shortcut, a flicker of movement snagged my periphery. He had shifted once more. No doubt remained. He was watching. Positioned near a weathered bench, his face remained obscured by shadow, yet his entire being felt directed my way. Options scrambled through my mind. Retreat to the car meant passing nearer his station. Forge ahead along the shortcut? It led toward more frequented zones, but frequented at this nascent hour might mean a solitary dog walker. Nothing more. I lengthened my stride, projecting a confidence I didn't possess, recalling some half-remembered advice about predators and fear. The path twisted, momentarily hiding him behind a screen of dense shrubbery. When that segment of the preserve reappeared, ice water seemed to sluice through my veins. He had closed the distance considerably. Now, proximity should have granted clarity, revealed his face. Instead, my vision seemed to falter, his features refusing to resolve, like recalling a dream figure's visage. The only other soul visible was an elderly gentleman guiding his terrier near the playground, hopelessly far. Phone retrieved. While maintaining my pace, I feigned a call, my voice a tremor I fought to control. "Hey, yeah, nearly done," I murmured into the dead receiver. "Alder Creek, yes. Back at the car in 5. A glance upward, closer still. He stood brazenly now, no pretense of concealment, just watching, waiting. I felt the weight of his gaze, a physical pressure, though the face remained stubbornly indistinct. My legs turned leaden, the familiar nightmare sensation of sluggish flight. Another abrupt change in direction, angling toward the park's main entrance. My pulse hammered, a frantic drum against my sternum. Part of me screamed to look back, to confirm pursuit. Another, wiser part knew the confirmation would be more terrifying than the uncertainty. The squeak of footwear on asphalt decided it. A furtive glance over my shoulder. He was walking, no, flowing, along the path behind me. Not running, yet somehow effortlessly matching my escalating pace. His movement possessed a liquid smoothness, profoundly unnatural, like footage played at an uncanny speed. I broke into a full sprint, shedding all pretense of calm. The entrance gate shimmered, impossibly distant. Lungs burned. Blood roared in my ears, nearly eclipsing all else. Nearly. Beneath the internal cacophony, I heard them. Footsteps. Gaining. Reaching the parking lot felt like breaching sanctuary. I fumbled for the key fob, fingers clumsy with adrenaline, stabbing the unlock button. The door handle felt alien in my grasp. I threw myself inside, slamming the lock down. Gasping, I scanned the lot. He stood at the tree line's edge, returned to perfect stillness, watching. The car roared to life. I reversed with reckless speed, nearly clipping a forgotten shopping cart. Pulling away, my eyes darted constantly to the rearview mirror. He never moved, offered no pursuit. Just stood, a fixed point, observing my escape. Driving home felt automated, my mind numb, gym clothes clinging with cold sweat. Inside my own locked doors, I immediately sought the Preserve's online community forum. A warning felt necessary, vital. But what could I articulate? Saw a man, standing. He watched me. Nothing overtly criminal had occurred. No words exchanged, no chase initiated, no gesture made. Yet the memory of that profound stillness, the unsettling fluidity of his movement, the face that wouldn't focus, it raised gooseflesh. For a week, running ceased. When courage finally returned, it steered me back to Alder Creek, only in the bright bustle of midday, amidst laughing children and ambling dogs. I scanned the periphery constantly, half expecting his static form between the familiar pines. He was never there. Sometimes the lure of the early morning quiet returns, the solitude, the peace, but the image intrudes, that motionless figure, the chilling certainty of being observed. Some tranquility, I've learned, isn't worth the gamble. I still run, but never alone now, never at the break of dawn, and never ever through Alder Creek Preserve. And always, always, my eyes probed the spaces between the trees, searching, ensuring no one stands there, perfectly still, watching and waiting. The last cardboard sarcophagus scraped across the threshold of the diminutive apartment, its arrival punctuating my exhaustion. Before I could even savor the dubious victory of moving in, the building superintendent, Mr. Karras, intercepted me. His face, a roadmap of worry lines, tightened further. "One thing, Elias," he began, his voice low, conspiratorial. "That window there." He gestured towards a small, grimy pane set high in the living room wall. "Never latch it fully shut. Never." I followed his gaze to the offending aperture. Its frame, warped by seasons of neglect, wept flakes of ancient paint. The wood looked swollen, diseased, and the brass latch seemed poised to disintegrate at the slightest provocation. The whole warning felt theatrical, absurd. Already a persistent rivulet of cold air snaked past the sill, stirring dust motes on the scarred parquet floor. I offered Karras a placating nod, a silent promise I had no intention of keeping, my mind already conjuring ways to staunch the draft. Barely 2 nights had passed before the insidious chill wore through my patience. Fed up with the whisper of air that disturbed my sleep, I marched to the window. With a reluctant, gritty screech, like bones grinding together after decades of disuse, the archaic latch surrendered. I twisted it firmly shut. No guilt pricked me, only the profound desire for uninterrupted rest. Karras's caution felt like folklore, a relic of the building's past. I recall giving the frame a dismissive pat, a gesture sealing my decision. "There," I might have muttered. Hours later, drifting in the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, resonant thuds jolted me upright. They originated from the living room, near the window. My initial thought, a neighbor's carelessly slammed door, evaporated as the impact settled into a desperate rhythmic battery. Thump, thump, thump. The sound vibrated through the floorboards, a frantic pulse echoing the sudden frantic hammering within my own chest. Disoriented, cocooned behind my closed bedroom door, I could only listen as something heavy struck wood, again and again. Thump, thump, thump. My heart became a frantic drum against my ribs. It had to be that window, that cursed window. Tossing aside the thin duvet, I scrambled from bed, the floor cold beneath my feet. The banging intensified, growing louder, more insistent as I navigated the short, dark hallway. A dryness coated my tongue. My arms felt like leaden weights, locked at my sides. My hand closed around the cool metal of the living room doorknob. Slowly, breath held captive in my lungs, I turned it and pushed the door inward. The darkness was profound, velvety, but across the room, silhouetted against the faint city glow, The window gaped wide open. It slammed violently against its own frame, driven by gusts of wind funneling into the apartment, the glass rattling precariously. It looked violated, forced. My fingers fumbled for the light switch. An antiquated overhead fixture flickered hesitantly before casting a weak, jaundiced glow. The window continued its percussive assault, but the room was undeniably empty. Cautiously, I advanced, each step measured, every muscle fiber tautening across my chest. The pulse in my ears roared. A peculiar static-like tingling bloomed on the left side of my ribcage. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. The invading air was frigid, raising goose flesh along my arms. Reaching the sill, I grasped the violently shuddering frame, wrestling against its momentum. It resisted, stuck fast for a heartbeat, then yielded with a groan. Fear coiled tight in my stomach, yet somehow I managed to force the latch back to its halfway point, precisely as Karis had instructed. Instantly, the banging ceased. The ensuing silence felt vast, unnatural, prickling at my skin. Sleep, when it finally came much later, was shallow and haunted by phantom echoes of that relentless pounding. Morning arrived, accompanied by a dull throb behind my eyes, the residue of a night devoid of genuine rest. Mr. Karas was nowhere in sight, a convenient absence that allowed me to postpone any awkward conversation. I brewed coffee, the mundane ritual, a flimsy shield against the night's strangeness. It was just the wind, I reasoned, the old frame too weak, the latch too unreliable. A logical explanation, yet a core of unease remained, a dissonant chord beneath the surface calm. Throughout the day, as I stalked cupboards, scrubbed countertops thick with the grime of previous occupants, and wiped down windows, my gaze kept returning to that small, problematic pane in the living room, half convinced it might burst open spontaneously. As dusk bled into night, I retreated to bed earlier than usual, a knot of apprehension tightening between my shoulder blades. The apartment felt unnervingly still, amplifying the memory of the violent banging. I attempted distraction. A dog-eared magazine, the endless scroll of my phone, but a persistent tremor lived in my hands. Around midnight, a soft creak emanated from the living room. Just the building settling, I told myself firmly, old timbers groaning under their own weight. Yet the tension in my chest ratcheted tighter. I lay rigid beneath the covers, straining to hear over the blood rushing in my ears. The night stretched interminably before oblivion finally claimed me. In the gray light of dawn, drawn by a morbid curiosity, I approached the window. The moment I neared the sill, the peculiar tingling returned to my chest, a faint electrical hum beneath the skin. I tried to dismiss it, attributing it to lingering anxiety. Perhaps fresh air was the cure. I pushed the window fully open, leaning out slightly. The sensation of being watched prickled the back of my neck, an absurd feeling given my fourth-floor vantage point overlooking nothing but a sheer drop to the brick-lined courtyard below. And yet, for a fleeting instant, I perceived a shape, an indistinct darkness clinging near the opposing brick wall. A blink, and it was gone, leaving only a residue of cold dread and goosebumps marching up my arms. I recoiled, breath catching in my throat. With trembling hands, I slammed the window shut, securing the latch in its mandated half-open state. Then I retreated, pacing the small apartment, seeking solace in mundane tasks, emptying the trash, arranging clothes in the closet. It offered little respite. Periodically, my eyes darted towards the window. It seemed to possess a malevolent awareness, watching me, waiting. Hours later, desperate for escape, I grabbed my keys and descended to the street. I walked aimlessly, letting the city air, thick with exhaust fumes, scour my thoughts. The building presented a grim facade, chipped brickwork scarred by time, tenacious vines clawing their way upwards. My apartment faced the rear, overlooking the narrow, neglected courtyard, littered with overflowing bins. I tried to rationalize the shape I'd glimpsed, a trick of the light, a shadow, cast by some unseen object, my own overwrought imagination. Returning, I found Mr. Karras sorting mail behind the small lobby desk. He offered a curt nod, his gaze quickly skittering away. The urge to confront him, to demand answers about the window, warred with a paralyzing sense of embarrassment. Explaining my fears felt foolish, accusatory. I settled for a weak wave and continued upstairs. That evening, determined to reclaim some semblance of normalcy, I settled in the living room to watch television, bathing the space in defiant light. Around 10, a subtle draft stirred the air. A soft rattling commenced at the window. My throat constricted. Turning down the volume, I listened intently. The rattling intensified, the glass vibrating as if pressed by an insistent wind. Slowly, deliberately, I rose. Each footfall on the creaking floorboards seemed unnaturally loud. My ankles felt brittle. The moment I reached the window, the rattling ceased. I placed a hesitant hand on the sill. The wood felt unnervingly cold, almost damp. Outside, the jaundiced glow of a distant street lamp illuminated the squalid courtyard. Then, a flicker of movement snagged my peripheral vision. Something shifted along the brick wall opposite, perhaps 10 feet from my window. A silhouette, fluid and silent. My heart hammered against my sternum with painful force. I blinked hard, and the form dissolved back into the shadows. Leaning closer, my nose almost touching the cool glass, I scanned the darkness below. Nothing. The courtyard lay inert, empty. But the tremor in my arms persisted, and beads of sweat traced cold paths down my spine. I backed away, pacing the confines of the small room like a caged animal. The impulse to call someone, anyone, was strong, yet utterly impractical. Who would believe a frantic report of a vanishing shape in a fourth-floor courtyard? Resigned, I resolved to stay awake, leaving the lights burning. I huddled on the sofa, knees drawn to my chest, waiting, listening. Exhaustion eventually won the battle around 2 in the morning, pulling me into a fitful doze. The following day, I cornered Karras as he fumbled with keys at the building's maintenance closet. "Mr. Karras," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "That window in my apartment. What's the story? Is something wrong with it?" His already pallid face seemed to drain further. He avoided my eyes, his gaze fixed on the dusty corridor wall. "Old building," he mumbled, the words barely audible. "Old ways." He mentioned previous tenants, fleeting occupants who never stayed long, but offered no specifics, no explanations. Before I could press him, he shuffled past me, disappearing down the hallway. I returned to my apartment, the unease solidifying into a cold certainty. That night, I refused passive victimhood. I reinforced the window latch with strips of heavy-duty tape, securing it in the half-closed position. For added measure, I placed a small lamp on a nearby table, casting a pool of light onto the sill. Then, I positioned a chair directly facing it, a sentinel determined to witness whatever transpired. Midnight arrived, and with it, a faint scraping sound. It began subtly, a dry skittering, like fingernails tracing patterns on weathered wood. I held my breath, the familiar tightness returning to my chest, fingertips tingling. Cold sweat trickled down my back. My eyes remained locked on the glass pane. The scraping escalated, louder now, coarser, as if a sharpened object was being dragged deliberately along the exterior frame. My hands clenched the arms of the chair, knuckles white, a primal urge to fling the window open, to scream into the darkness, warred with paralyzing terror. The scraping morphed into a series of distinct light taps against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Like knuckles rapping for entry, directly at eye level. Impossible. There was no ledge, no fire escape, nothing outside capable of supporting a person. Yet, something was undeniably there. Knocking. The frantic rhythm of my heart intensified, blooming into a sharp ache beneath my ribs. With monumental effort, I forced myself to stand. My legs trembled. Each shaky step forward amplified the sound of my own ragged breathing. Tap, tap, tap. I reached out, my fingertip brushing the cold glass. A faint vibration pulsed beneath my touch, the undeniable sensation of a physical impact from the other side. I snatched my hand back as if burned. The tapping instantly stopped. Silence crashed down, thick and suffocating. My ears rang. For several seconds I remained frozen, unable to move, unable to think. Then, with shocking violence, a powerful gust of wind slammed against the window. The tape ripped free. The latch gave way with a sickening snap, and the window flew inward, crashing against the interior wall. Frigid night air flooded the room, carrying a faint, earthy, unpleasant odor. I stumbled backward, colliding heavily with the chair. The lamp flickered wildly. My gaze shot to the gaping opening. Nothing. Only the impenetrable blackness of the night sky and the shadowy geometry of the courtyard far below. Lunging forward, propelled by sheer panic, I grabbed the frame. Every instinct screamed at me to force it back, to secure it in that halfway position. Though I saw nothing, the feeling of a presence was overwhelming, a palpable weight pressing down on my chest. My arms shook uncontrollably as I wrestled the window back into place, finally managing to engage the damaged latch. The moment it clicked home, the wind abruptly died. Retreating on trembling legs, gasping for air, I fled to the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. The tingling in my chest remained, pulsing in sync with my racing heartbeat. I burrowed under the covers, switched on the bedside lamp, and stared fixedly at the door, jumping at every creak and groan of the old building. I remained there, hyper alert, until the first pale streaks of dawn crept beneath the curtains. Then, feeling hollowed out, robotic, I dragged myself from bed. In the days that followed, an uneasy truce was established. I made my peace with the window, or rather, with the entity it seemed tethered to. I no longer touched the latch, save to ensure it remained precisely half open, as Karis had warned. The faint scraping and tapping persisted most nights, a low, unsettling background noise, but the violent escalations ceased. I deliberately avoided looking outside, particularly after dark. Curiosity warred with a primal fear I was unwilling to test further. My sole objective became coexistence, minimizing the disturbances enough to allow for fragmented sleep. One evening, however, passing through the living room, a flicker of movement beyond the glass snagged my attention. Against my better judgment, I froze, then cautiously approached the pane. My heart began its familiar frantic pounding. Close enough now, I discerned it, a dark shape adhering to the brickwork opposite. Featureless, vaguely humanoid, it clung there, impossibly suspended in the void, utterly silent. As I watched, paralyzed, it seemed to slide sideways, melting out of my line of sight. A strangled gasp lodged in my throat. A burning sensation flared in my chest. I backed away slowly, stumbling against the arm of the sofa. Deep breaths did little to steady me. "Don't look out there again," a voice screamed in my mind. Never again. Now, the window dictates the rhythm of my anxiety. Every time I pass it, I feel the prickle of dread, the phantom tingling across my ribs. It remains perpetually ajar, admitting drafts regardless of the weather. Locking it is unthinkable. I skirt that corner of the living room after sunset. If I hear the tapping, I raise the volume on the television or retreat to the bedroom. If my peripheral vision catches movement outside, I turn away sharply. Sometimes I wake deep in the night, ears ringing, convinced I heard the banging return, but I stay burrowed beneath the covers, heart thudding a frantic tattoo against my ribs, until sleep reclaims me or dawn arrives. Moving isn't simple. The lease is a chain, finance is a padlock. Easy alternatives remain elusive. Mr. Karras maintains his distance. The window is a silent, unacknowledged pact between us. I cannot face another confrontation with whatever clings to that fourth-floor wall. All I comprehend with chilling clarity is that the window must never be fully closed. That lesson was learned, etched into my psyche by terror. If its nature demands this precarious openness, then open it shall remain. I will not provoke it again. So heed this. Should you ever find yourself in an aging edifice and someone offers a cryptic warning about a window, listen. Believe them. It might just preserve your sanity, or at least grant you a few more hours of undisturbed sleep. That inaugural night within the skeletal embrace of the house, I recall how my own respiration rasped against the profound quiet. Even now, wakeful in the attic's gloom, a parched vacancy fills my mouth, and the fine hairs along my forearms lift, tingling as if brushed by unseen currents. A compact torch is jammed between my teeth, its beam wavering as my arms delve shoulder-deep into a crate brimming with brittle newsprint and rusted fasteners. The air hangs thick with the scent of decay, aged timber, and something else, something indefinably stale. My presence here is nascent, mere days separating me from the clamor of my previous life beside the roaring motorway. Yet this place, this structure of wood and secrets, already exerts a pressure behind my eyes, a nascent certainty that arrival was profound error. The estate agent, when first I viewed the property, had deflected inquiries with practiced ease. Decrepit? Assuredly. The fate of the last occupant? A vague gesture encompassing disappearance or demise. But the sum was negligible, and my need for severance absolute. A tremor of doubt should have sounded when I glimpsed the stairwell's peeling paper, like sunburnt skin curling from plaster. or the dining room's chandelier hanging askew, a crystal spider frozen mid-fall. The house felt vacant, less a home than a husk. And now, this ascent to the attic, my gaze snagging involuntarily on a shapeless mound, huddled in the corner, shrouded in fabric. Earlier, preoccupied with the rudimentary assembly of a bed below, the unpacking of minimal necessities, I'd registered its presence. A tall, anthropomorphic silhouette draped in a pallid, dust-dulled sheet. A disregarded painting, perhaps, or a cheval glass. Tonight, however, sleep fractured. A sound, delicate yet distinct, a soft give directly overhead. I scaled the constricted attic stairs, pulse a frantic drum against my ribs, seeking prosaic causes. A warped sash, timber settling into its ancient bones. But crossing the threshold, the atmosphere palpably thickened, heavy, as if the room itself drew breath. My torchlight skittered across rafters and derelict furnishings before the sound repeated. A faint, protracted strain, so subtle it might have been floorboards, sighing under changing temperature. Yet it felt directed, a sibilant beckoning. A difficult swallow. There, in the far recess, partially obscured by a jumble of upended chairs, stood the shrouded form. Impossible now to ignore. My limbs felt leaden, my palms slick. I advanced, fingers closing on the sheet's grimy upper hem. It yielded with a soft tearing sound, releasing a plume of gray motes that stung my eyes and throat. Coughing, blinking away the haze, I saw what lay beneath. A stand-in mirror, imposing and old. Its wooden frame bore intricate swirling carvings, time-ravaged and chipped. The glass itself uneven, subtly warped, marred by a hairline fissure snaking diagonally near one corner. I directed the torch beam onto my own visage, gaunt, pale, eyes shadowed by fatigue. Yet, hovering just behind my reflected shoulder, lingered something else, an ill-defined shape. Closer inspection, a smudge on the silvered surface. No, it resolved into a figure, indistinct yet undeniably present within the glass. A hat pulled low, obscuring the brow. Where eyes should be, only tenebrous hollows. I spun, sweeping the light across the space behind me. Empty chairs, a solitary trunk, dust motes dancing in the beam. Nothing. Returning my gaze to the mirror, the figure remained, impossibly close, an intimate phantom. A constriction seized my throat. A tremor began in my left hand. I oscillated the light, testing for illusion, some trick of reflection or shadow. The presence in the glass held fast, immutable. Its features remained veiled, yet I sensed, or perhaps projected, a nascent smile, an anticipation of mirth. Snatching the sheet, I flung it back over the glass and stumbled towards the attic door, the floor groaning beneath my hasty retreat. Downstairs, sprawled on the mattress, breath shallow, I courted the dawn. Each closure of my eyes summoned the reflected figure, poised eternally at my back. The house's silence deepened, pressing like water against my eardrums. By the rational light of day, I sought explanations. The attic's dimness, the mirror's antique distortions, perhaps my own silhouette, warped and misconstrued. Midday found me forcing another ascent, the air stagnant and warm. I peeled back the sheet again, half braced for the immediate reappearance. But the glass offered only myself, posture slumped, blinking sweat from my lashes. I scrutinized my face, older than I cared to acknowledge, stubble rough across my jaw. Yet something felt discordant. The beard seemed wrong, certain hairs coiling unnaturally. I smoothed a hand over my chin. My reflection hesitated, its mirrored action lagging a crucial fraction of a second behind my own. Ice traced a path down my spine. Subtle, yet undeniable. Leaning closer, nose almost touching the cool glass, the faint crack bisected my reflected forehead. And then, gazing into my own reflected eyes, I perceived it again, faintly behind my shoulder, the presence that logic denied. I recoiled, throwing the sheet back with clumsy haste. A frantic urge to dispose of it surged, but how? Its bulk, its weight. Who would accept such a thing? Could I wrestle it to the curb for collection? A visceral reluctance stayed my hand. Overreaction, I told myself, descending once more, attempting immersion in mundane tasks, arranging cutlery, retrieving junk mail. The world outside persisted, placid and ordinary. Yet, an insistent itch persisted at the base of my skull throughout the day. Evening brought bone-deep weariness. Sleep beckoned early. The mattress, a lumpy island on the bare floorboards. I left the bedside lamp burning. Just as consciousness began to fray, it returned. The same insinuating creak from above, the gentle summons. My heart lurched into a frantic cadence. I twisted on the mattress, sweat filming my skin. Around midnight, a soundless pressure bloomed in the air. A muffled laugh, felt rather than heard, like humor choked behind a thick door. Bolting upright, breath catching, mouth arid, the air tasting of dust and disuse. I compelled myself upward, hammer clutched in one hand, its weight a foolish comfort. The attic door swung inward without a whisper. The sheet draping the mirror stirred, a faint undulation, though no draft penetrated this sealed space. I advanced with deliberate steps, then yanked the covering down. My reflection stared back, wan, haggard, and altered. My beard now appeared markedly longer on the left side, hairs twisting at impossible angles. My left eye drooped, subtly aged. I touched my cheek. It felt ordinary beneath my fingers, yet the image in the glass remained warped. And then, my reflection smiled, a slow, deliberate curving of the lips, while my own mouth remained rigidly set. It smiled without me. I staggered backward, breath sawing in my chest. The figure behind me was there again, closer now, its outline sharper, less equivocal. The hat, the pit-like eyes. My reflection's face twitched, contorted in silent internal laughter. I could have sworn its shoulders shifted, an inclination towards the shadowed form, as if reaching to link arms. I whirled, hammer raised high. Empty air, disturbed dust. I let the sheet fall back over the mirror and fled downstairs, balance precarious, collapsing onto a kitchen chair, head buried in my hands, heart battering my ribs. Leave, the thought screamed. Just leave this place. But resources were depleted, the bargain struck, no sanctuary awaited, and in the depths of night, who could I summon? Logic dictated waiting for morning. Perhaps then I could shatter it? Yes, pulverize the glass. Yet, even the thought induced a wave of profound nausea, a gut-wrenching fear of unleashing whatever malignancy resided behind the silvering. My forehead prickled with cold sweat. I forced myself calm, gulping water directly from the tap. The coolness, a temporary balm. Returning to bed was futile. Sleep remained elusive. Every groan of the old structure became a footfall. My scalp tingled. The mocking, altered reflection haunted the darkness behind my eyelids. An indeterminate time passed in shallow, troubled dozing. Morning arrived reluctantly, filtering weakly through grime-streaked panes. A leaden weight settled in my limbs, muscles aching as if from nocturnal struggle. In the bathroom, the small mundane mirror over the basin offered reassurance. My face looked tired. Yes, but blessedly normal. No errant beard hairs, no unnerving asymmetry. A nervous laugh escaped me. Perhaps exhaustion and fear had conspired. Resolution hardening, I returned to the attic, armed with a new plan and a thick blanket. Wrap it, haul it downstairs, stow it in the garage, banish it. The attic lay quiet, shafts of sunlight piercing the dusty air. I drew the sheet away with deliberate care. My heart seized. My reflection confronted me. No phantom lurked behind it, not immediately, but my reflected eyes seemed hollowed, the surrounding skin sunken, as if vitality had leached out overnight. My beard, which felt normal to my touch, appeared patchy and disordered in the glass. My reflection tilted its head fractionally, lagging just behind my own movement. My stomach churned. Sweat bloomed on my palms. The back of my neck prickled with awareness. Hesitantly, I reached out, pressing fingertips against the mirror's cold surface. It felt frigid, an unnatural chill that stung. For one infinitesimal second, I sensed a reciprocal pressure from within, something pushing back. My reflection's mouth stretched into a silent, mirthless grin. I snatched my hand away as if burned. The floorboards creaked, louder this time, and I felt, rather than saw, movement just behind me. I dared not turn. Staring fixedly into the glass, I saw the brim of the hat, the deep-set eyes emerging at the frame's edge. It was drawing nearer. My reflection was trapped between me and it. Or perhaps I was trapped between them. My heart hammered against my ribs. Smash it now? What if the entity simply stepped through the fractured portal? Flee? But freedom felt illusory. This presence would follow. Action was imperative. My hand trembled as I grasped the heavy blanket, breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The figure loomed inches away in the reflection, eclipsing my own distorted features. I could almost feel its chill breath upon my neck. I lunged, throwing the blanket over the mirror. The instant the glass was obscured, an abrupt silence fell upon the attic. No creaks, no sighs. I wrestled the mirror away from the wall, sending stacked chairs clattering. Dust choked my lungs. It was heavier than anticipated, and as I tilted it forward, a faint dry scraping emanated from the other side. Like fingernails dragged across glass, I nearly dropped it, shaking uncontrollably, vision swimming. Step by agonizing step, I maneuvered it down the narrow attic stairs, each tread groaning under the combined weight. Reaching the ground floor hallway brought a surge of desperate relief. I leaned the blanket-shrouded mirror against the wall near the garage entrance. My pulse still raced, but distance offered a fragile buffer. Perhaps a trip to the municipal dump was feasible. Yet the thought of uncovering it again, of confronting my twisted visage and the thing behind it, filled me with paralyzing dread. Night seeped into the house. I consumed cold soup from a can, oblivious to taste. The silence felt ponderous, expectant. Before attempting sleep, I navigated the hallway, giving the shrouded mirror a wide berth. It stood inert, monolithic. Later, I woke abruptly in the pitch darkness, summoned by that silent laughter. A vibration felt deep within my bones. My hands shook violently. Pushing the bedroom door open a mere crack, I peered into the dim corridor. Streetlight cast faint illumination, enough to discern the mirror's outline beneath the blanket. It seemed taller, leaning slightly forward, as if listening intently. My stomach revolted. Compelled, I crept towards it. Reaching out, I laid a hand flat against the cloth. Beneath, the surface remained unnaturally cold. I could feel a subtle outward pressure, a faint convexity against my palm. The crack in the glass, I recalled its precise location. Had it widened? Trembling, I lifted the blanket's edge by a scant inch. Within the confined darkness, an eye stared back. My reflected eye, yet horribly misaligned, displaced, sliding partially off the surface where it should reside. And behind it, the dark curve of a hat brim, a suggestion of a grin lurking in the deeper shadow, waiting for a lapse, an invitation, a moment to exchange places. I let the cloth fall back. My breathing was ragged, loud in the stillness. Destruction felt impossible, observation unbearable, abandonment unthinkable. Blood pounded in my ears. Stumbling back to my room, I closed the door, sinking to the floor, sweat tracing cold paths down my spine. True safety felt irrevocably lost. My other self resided within that glass, warped and soundlessly laughing. Even now, through the solid wood of the door, I imagined the faint gleam of silvered glass at the edges of vision, its influence permeating the very walls. My skin crawled. I rubbed my cheeks, searching for tangible distortion. They felt normal. But when I flicked on the lamp and risked a glance in my small pocket mirror, I could swear my beard looked subtly uneven, one eye socket appearing infinitesimally deeper. I snapped the mirror shut, heart hammering. The night stretched, elastic and menacing. Sleep was a distant shore I could not reach. Intermittently, the gentle creak resurfaced, from the attic floorboards perhaps, still calling. Or was it the dry rasp of fingernails scoring the hidden side of the glass? Somewhere in the darkness, just beyond sight, my reflection waited, patient, hungry, poised for my inevitable moment of weakness. Resistance felt finite. For now, I remained here, trembling, pulse erratic, praying that the encroaching dawn might hold the darkness at bay, if only for one more day. The instant our car breached the borders of Ethelberg, a stillness settled, the kind that belongs less to peace and more to preservation. Something felt curated, ossified beneath an invisible bell jar. The smiles plastered on the faces we passed were too symmetrical, the waves too vigorously cheerful. Behind the welcoming veneer, an unnerving latency hummed. Little could we fathom that this haven, our chosen escape, would curdle into a waking nightmare, orchestrated by the very community embracing us. My wife Clara and I had craved severance from the city's relentless pulse. Its friction had worn us smooth, left us yearning for quietude. An online listing whispered of Ethelberg, showcasing a listing for a brooding, elegant Victorian house, at a price that felt like a misprint. The accompanying photographs depicted a hamlet seemingly untouched by the forward march of time, suspended in amber sunlight. We rolled in on a Saturday glazed with morning sun, the moving lorry groaning down the immaculate main street. Figures paused their activities, turning towards us with those unnervingly radiant smiles. It was a stark, almost aggressive counterpoint to the urban anonymity we'd fled. As we braked before our new residence, a knot of neighbors had already materialized on the pavement. A woman, perhaps in her 50s, her hair sculpted into improbable waves, her dress a riot of florals, detached herself from the group. "Welcome, welcome to Ethelberg." Her voice was bright, brittle, as she thrust a hand forward. "I'm Agnes, chair of the Welcome Committee, you know. Thrilled to bits to have fresh blood in our little town." I took her hand, the grip surprisingly firm, feeling submerged by the sheer force of her enthusiasm. "Thank you. I'm Elias. This is Clara. We're glad to be here." The remainder of the day dissolved into a performance of neighborly perfection. Hands materialized to help empty the lorry. Covered dishes appeared on the porch railing, and anecdotes about Ethelberg's quaint history were offered like catechisms. By nightfall, exhaustion had settled deep in our bones, yet a fragile optimism about our relocation flickered. Our first week vanished in the chaos of cardboard boxes and misplaced essentials. The town's friendliness remained relentless, bordering on invasive. Someone was perpetually materializing on the doorstep, bearing muffins, offering tours, inquiring solicitously after our settling in. It was during one such guided walk, chaperoned by our neighbor Silas, that the first discordant note truly resonated. Passing the austere town hall, I glimpsed a cluster of figures near the entrance, heads bowed in low, urgent conference. As our steps neared, they scattered like startled birds, their serious expressions melting instantly into practiced cheerfulness. The transition was jarring, reptilian. "What's the hubbub?" I ventured, aiming for casual. Silas produced a laugh, a sound stretched slightly too thin. "Oh, that? Likely just hashing out details for the next festival. We do love our little traditions here in Ethelberg." I offered a nod, but the image lingered, a stolen moment of gravity I felt distinctly unwelcome to have observed. In the ensuing days, the oddities accumulated like dust motes in a sunbeam, conversations that snapped shut the moment Clara or I drew near, fleeting conspiratorial glances exchanged between lifelong residents like silent signals. The peculiar fact that no one ever seemed to depart Ethelberg, not for holidays, not for errands, not for anything. One evening, roughly a month into our new life, Clara and I sat down to a quiet supper. A sudden clamor erupted outside. Through the dining room window, we saw a young man sprinting down the lane, his face a mask of raw terror. A phalanx of townspeople pursued him, their movements unnervingly coordinated. "We need to call the police," Clara whispered, hand already reaching for her phone. But before the first digit was pressed, a sharp rap echoed on our front door. It was Agnes, her customary smile looking frayed, stretched taut over something else. All perfectly fine, she chirped, her voice pitched unnaturally high. Just one of our little town games, harmless fun, nothing for you to fret about. We nodded dumbly, unwilling to cause friction, but the instant the door clicked shut, Clara spun towards me, her eyes wide. Elias, that wasn't right. Did you see his face? He was petrified. I couldn't deny it. The low hum of unease that had thrummed beneath the surface since our arrival was escalating into a palpable throb. The following day, I resolved to excavate. I sought the local library, hoping its archives might hold some key, some historical precedent for the town's suffocating strangeness. The librarian, a desiccated woman named Ms. Pritchard, initially offered assistance, directing me towards volumes on Ethelberg's founding fathers and agricultural triumphs. But when I inquired about records pertaining to unusual occurrences, accidents, or disappearances, her helpfulness evaporated. I regret to say those particular archives are restricted, she stated, her gaze flicking nervously towards a locked oak door behind her desk. By order of the town council. Administrative necessity, you understand. I feigned acceptance, but my suspicion solidified. What secrets necessitated locked doors and council mandates? That night, I relayed my findings to Clara. She too had gathered unsettling fragments, hushed dialogue ceasing abruptly as she entered the solitary cafe, peculiar symbols half glimpsed etched into the lintels of older cottages. We have to uncover what's happening, I insisted, the quiet Victorian house suddenly feeling less like a home and more like a cage. This transcends small-town eccentricity. Clara met my gaze, her fear mirroring my own. We formulated a tentative plan. The next Ethelberg Town Council meeting was scheduled in 2 days. We would attend, ostensibly as interested newcomers, hoping to decipher the town's veiled script. The evening of the meeting arrived. The town hall air was thick with anticipation and the scent of old wood polish. Our presence, as the newest residents, drew subtle glances, but the surface remained placidly polite. Proceedings commenced with mundane discussions, potholes, funding for the upcoming Harvest Gala. Then, Mayor Hawthorne cleared his throat, a dry, rasping sound that silenced the room. And now, he announced, his voice resonating with false gravitas, we address the matter of the offering. A profound stillness fell. Clara and I exchanged a look, our pulses accelerating in unison. Offering. As you are all aware, the mayor continued, his gaze sweeping the assembly. A decade has passed since our last contribution. The time is upon us once more to ensure Ethelberg's continued prosperity, its enduring safety. A low murmur of assent rippled through the gathered townsfolk. An icy dread traced its path down my spine. The selection has been made, Mayor Hawthorne declared, producing a folded paper, and I am gratified to announce that our most recent arrivals have been chosen for this distinct honor. Every head in the hall swiveled towards us. The smiles returned, but stripped of warmth, revealing something primal and voracious beneath. Elias and Clara, the mayor intoned, his voice slick with counterfeit warmth. "We are so deeply honored that you will partake in this most sacred tradition." Before comprehension could fully dawn, before protest could form, rough hands seized our arms. We were hauled from our seats, the crowd parting like water before a grim procession. Our struggles, our cries, were futile against the collective resolve. We were propelled out of the hall, towards the dense woods bordering the town. As we plunged into the trees' deeper shadows, a clearing flickered ahead, lit by the feral dance of torchlight. At its heart stood a colossal stone altar, its surface ominously stained, dark patches hinting at horrors I dared not contemplate. "What is this?" I roared, twisting against the unyielding grips. "What are you doing?" Agnes materialized beside us, her face serene, beatific. "Hush now, dear," she soothed. "It is for the greater good. Ethelberg exists because of a covenant, you see. One that has shielded us, enriched us, for generations. But the pact demands its price. Every 10th year, a sacrifice ensures the balance." The truth struck with the force of a physical blow. This idyllic town, its welcoming facade, its curated charm, a monstrous lie. Beneath it pulsed a dark, ancient ritual, a hunger that had likely consumed countless others before us. As they forced us nearer the altar, the assembled townspeople began a low, guttural chant in a language that scraped against my ears, alien and terrifying. Their faces, once neighbors, were now masks of ecstatic, terrifying devotion. Clara's eyes found mine, wide with terror, a silent, desperate plea. In that instant, a primal instinct surged. We had to fight. We had to escape this abattoir, disguised as a sanctuary. Adrenaline detonated within me. I wrenched free from one captor, lunging at the figure restraining Clara, sending him stumbling. "Run!" I screamed, grappling with the hands clawing to reclaim me. Clara hesitated, a heartbeat of agonizing indecision, torn between flight and intervention. "Go!" I yelled again, desperation lending my voice an unfamiliar edge. This time she obeyed, vanishing into the oppressive blackness of the woods. As the townsfolk swarmed, overpowering me, I saw Mayor Hawthorne's face twist into a mask of fury. "Find her," he bellowed, his voice cracking. "The offering demands completion." I was dragged, kicking and cursing, to the stone slab, my strength no match for their numbers. Pinned beneath them, I heard shouts, the crash of undergrowth in the distance, Clara still fighting, still free. Agnes leaned over me, a cruel parody of a smile illuminating her features. "Do not despair, Elias. Your contribution will nourish Ethelberg. You and your wife ensure our continued thriving." She raised a wickedly curved dagger, its obsidian surface gleaming in the torchlight. I squeezed my eyes shut, pouring every ounce of my will into a silent command. "Run, Clara, run. Expose this place. Let the world know." The final sensation before an explosion of agony consumed my senses was a distant scream, Clara's voice, sharp with terror and pain. Then, gratefully, oblivion took me. I wish that were the denouement, that my existence ended upon that cold stone, that Clara found her way out. The reality is infinitely more grotesque. I awoke in our bed, sunlight streaming through the window. Clara slept beside me, her breathing even, peaceful. No wounds marked my body. No trace remained of the previous night's horrors. When I tried to speak of it, grasping for the nightmare's edges, Clara regarded me with gentle confusion. "Elias, what are you talking about?" she asked, concern furrowing her brow. "We attended the meeting, came home tired, went straight to sleep. Are you feeling quite yourself?" As days bled into weeks, doubt gnawed at my certainty. Had the stress, the move, conjured a vivid, terrible hallucination? But then, I'd perceive the flickers, a knowing depth in Agnes's gaze as she passed our porch, a half-familiar symbol carved deep into an ancient oak at the wood's edge, the unnerving way the townsfolk observed us now, a disquieting blend of smug satisfaction and patient expectation. We remain here, in Ethelberg, inexplicably bound. Departure feels not just difficult, but metaphysically impossible. Each day unfolds with placid pleasantness. Every neighbor extends unwavering friendliness. Yet I carry the chilling knowledge of the rot beneath the rose bushes. I exist within their perfectly preserved tableau, counting the days, the years, wondering when the cycle will turn again, when the covenant will demand its due, and whose names will next be called to ensure Ethelberg's dark, enduring prosperity. Should your travels lead you down a road that winds into a town too flawless, too welcoming, do not slow down. Accelerate. Some secrets fester best undisturbed, and certain communities nourish horrors beneath their picture-perfect skin. Ethelberg's shadowed heart beats steadily on, and we, its unwilling constituents, are powerless to silence it.